As the sun set over the bluffs, the team gathered for a moment of rare peace. The criminals were behind bars, the witnesses were safe, and the fog of street Johns finally seemed to lift. Chapter 1. The Sketch of a Shadow. The investigation into the disappearance of Megan Schaefer had started with a silence that was almost deafening. Megan, a brilliant lawyer at Wilkins Law, had vanished in broad daylight. The only witness was a 12-year-old boy named Brian, who lived in a world of silence of his own. Jason. Brian was autistic and communicated primarily through his art. Jai. His mother, Emma, explained that he possessed a photographic memory, capturing every detail with haunting precision. On the sidewalk where Megan had been taken, Brian had etched a drawing so detailed it was almost like a photograph, revealing the face of an abductor that no one else had seen. Jai. Hudson knelt beside the boy, feeling a surge of empathy that he usually kept guarded behind his badge. Sarah Truong, the lead forensic specialist, stepped out of the fog, her presence a familiar comfort. As they looked at Brian's drawing together, their shoulders brushed a brief, electric moment that lingered in the cold air. "He's trying to save her," Sarah whispered, her eyes meeting Hudson's with an intensity that spoke of more than just the case. Ja. The kidnapping turned into a high-stakes game of extortion. A ransom note demanded $2 million in untraceable bills. Sarah devised a brilliant, risky plan to spray the money with a synthetic scent undetectable to humans, but a beacon for Rex. The trail didn't lead to a stranger, but to the heart of Megan's own firm. It was Todd, a partner at the firm, who had stolen escrow funds and hired a career criminal, Earl Blackburn, to kidnap Megan and frame her ex-boyfriend, Jamie. When they found Megan in a derelict machine shop, Hudson realized that in a city of fog, the greatest dangers often wore the most respectable masks. Jiashi. Chapter 2. Blood on the Best Kind. The peace after Megan's rescue was short-lived. The harbor soon echoed with the news of another tragedy, the murder of Jacob Kaufman, a ruthless Toronto investor. He was found on his luxury yacht, the Best Kind, pinned to the deck by a spear gun. Eda. Jia. The investigation was a maze of high-tech motives and old-fashioned greed. Kaufman's watch, a reproduction of a vintage diving piece, was missing. Hidden inside the watch was a 6-4-digit cryptocurrency key worth hundreds of millions. Sarah's forensic eye noted that the murder weapon was coated in seawater, suggesting the killer had come from the ocean, not the dock. Hudson and Sarah spent long nights on the yacht, the rocking of the waves, a rhythmic backdrop to their shared focus. The tension between them was as palpable as the salt in the air. When they discovered that Veronica, Kaufman's partner, had used a PIN code on a phone to frame Kaufman's wife and had murdered a co-conspirator to cover her tracks, the case reached its boiling point. Amidst the chaos of the arrest, Hudson found himself marveling at Sarah's brilliance, a feeling that was becoming increasingly difficult to categorize as purely professional. Jason. Chapter 3. The Secret of Willem's Blend. The aroma of salt was soon replaced by the sharp, botanical scent of juniper at the Devereux distillery. Willem Devereux, the family patriarch, had been found drowned in a vat of his own gin. It was a case of family legacy turned toxic. Jason. Willem had been dying of congestive heart failure and had intended to change his will to favor his daughter, Melanie. Daure, a spirit critic, Simone Sawyer, was poisoned with eye drop medication to frame Willem's son, Jaden, who was secretly trying to sell the company. The secret ingredient in the gin was Labrador tea, a local botanical that Rex tracked through the distillery. Jagar. The truth was a tragedy of misunderstood intentions. Melanie, believing her father was going to humiliate her rather than empower her, had found him unconscious and dragged him to the vat. As Hudson and Sarah closed the case, they stood in the distillery lab, the warm glow of the equipment reflecting in Sarah's eyes. Hudson reached out, his hand hovering near hers. "At least they have the truth now," he replied, his voice low and steady. Chapter 4. The Hunt in the Bluffs. The final trial of the week took them out of the city and into the rugged wilderness of Cape Royal. Tyler Craner, the volatile son of a drug runner, had executed a man named Malcolm Carter in cold blood. The only witness, Wyatt Donner, had fled into the dense forest. Jashi, Hudson, Rex, and Sarah pursued them into the bluffs, unaware that a professional hitwoman, Serena Rickett, was also stalking the witness. The woods were a labyrinth of shadows and sudden danger. In a clearing, the silence was shattered by gunfire. Hudson was hit, a bullet grazing his arm, as he moved to protect the witness. Despite the pain, Hudson refused to stop. Through a desperate plan and Rex's unfailing courage, they managed to corner Serena before she could complete her contract. When the dust settled, Sarah was there, her hands trembling slightly as she tended to Hudson's wound. "Jiayi, you always take the hit for everyone else," she whispered, her eyes fierce with a mix of relief and anger. Hudson looked at her, the mask of the stoic detective finally slipping. "Only because I know you're there to catch me," he said. In the fading light of the bluffs, the distance between them finally vanished. As they sat by the fire at the trailhead later that night, Rex resting at their feet, the fog of street John's didn't feel like a shroud anymore. It felt like home. The fog clung to the jagged cliffs of Street John's like a restless spirit, blurring the line between the icy Atlantic and the cobblestone streets. For Detective Mark Hudson, the damp air was a familiar weight. But today, it carried the sharp scent of a storm, both literal and metaphorical. Beside him, Rex, the German shepherd, whose instincts often surpassed human logic, stood like a sentinel, his ears twitching at the sound of a distant siren. Number Part I. The silent witness. The case had begun with a disappearance that felt like a tear in the fabric of the community. Megan Schaefer, a promising lawyer, had vanished while walking home, leaving behind nothing but an empty briefcase. In the quiet neighborhood where she was last seen, a young boy named Brian sat on the sidewalk, his hands moving with feverish precision. Brian lived in a world of silence, finding his voice through the vibrant lead of colored pencils. His mother, Emma, explained that Brian was autistic and rarely spoke, yet his memory was a high-definition camera, capturing every detail of the world around him. On the concrete, he had sketched a hauntingly accurate image of a man, the abductor. Hudson knelt beside the boy, feeling a surge of empathy. He was joined by Sarah Trong, the forensic specialist whose presence always seemed to steady Hudson's often turbulent thoughts. "He's trying to tell us something," Sarah whispered, her eyes meeting Hudson's in a brief, electric moment that neither acknowledged. "This isn't just art. It's a map." The investigation quickly took a dark turn. Sarah devised a plan to spray the money with a synthetic scent, undetectable to humans but like a beacon to Rex. The trail of betrayal led back to the law firm's partner, Todd. Desperate to cover his own theft of escrow funds, Todd had hired a criminal named Earl Blackburn to kidnap Megan, framing her ex-boyfriend Jamie, who was found murdered in a van. In a tense confrontation in an abandoned machine shop, Hudson and Rex rescued Megan just as the walls of Todd's deception crumbled. Number. Part 2. The Ghost of the Times. Best kind asterisk. Peace was a fleeting luxury. No sooner had Megan been returned home than a new tragedy struck the marina. Jacob Kaufman, a ruthless Toronto investor, was found dead on his luxury yacht. The Times' best kind asterisk. The weapon was a spear gun, fired with surgical precision. Kaufman was pinned to the deck, his expensive watch a reproduction containing the keys to a fortune in cryptocurrency missing. Sarah noted the spear was coated in seawater, suggesting the killer approach from the harbor rather than the dock. Hudson navigated a web of suspects. Kaufman's domineering wife, Andrea, his tech-savvy partner, Veronica, and a disgruntled deckhand named Blaine. The air between Hudson and Sarah crackled with the intensity of the hunt. They spent late nights in the lab, their professional collaboration seamless, their unspoken connection growing over autopsy reports and distinctive mahogany watch cases. The truth was as cold as the sea. Veronica had orchestrated the murder, hiring a software engineer named Endicott to do the deed. When Endicott became a liability, she silenced him as well. Veronica had even sent a text from Andrea's phone to incriminate the widow. It was only through Rex's keen instincts and Sarah's analysis that they found the watch hidden on the boat, leading to a final showdown where Veronica was taken into custody. Part 3. The secret ingredient. The scent of the sea was replaced by the sharp, botanical aroma of juniper when Willem de Vereux, the patriarch of a famous distillery, was found dead. He had been drowned in a vat of his own gin during a party, intended to celebrate a new recipe.